Well, hi again, everybody. We've got a bonus podcast for midweek where there's so much happening. There's a game of night, Gary, isn't there? We've got lots to talk about. And we have to start with the title race and what's happened here with Manchester City. But maybe we should start with something I've not seen before, to tribute to Erling Haaland. And he didn't do much in the game except score another record-breaking goal.
Yeah, I said during the game that he probably has only had about 100 touches and he scored 50 goals or 51 goals. Look, sometimes you watch a football player and you think it's a sort of once-in-a-lifetime type sort of player that you see. We've had Ronaldo, I think Cristiano Ronaldo that I played with, and you just think a generational world-class player. He's a different level. You talk about world class, and then there's like the sort of very top that any team in the world have. And I said the other day that we very rarely see these players come to the Premier League in the prime, where you know they're going to be world class. They usually sign for other clubs in other parts of the world, but he's an absolute sensation. And what he's added to this Manchester City team, it's not being disrespectful to say that you could get a little bit tired of watching Manchester City pass the ball around 100 million times over the last 5 years and win football matches, because my type of football is Jurgen Klopp, Sir Alex Ferguson, that real sort of electricity, high tempo football, forward pressing, imperfect football if you like. What we've now seen with City is that they can play imperfect football and the perfect football. They're so much better to watch with him in the team because he doesn't fit into the ideology of Pep Guardiola in terms of the dropping in, the false nine, the link in the play. He's a little bit sometimes clumsy with the ball around his feet, and it's a little bit sort of like different. But I just absolutely think he's phenomenal. I just think
Superman.
He is, honestly. You watch that run tonight that he's made for that goal. He's made another 10 of those, by the way, that people may not have seen at home, that has been ignored, and he keeps making them, and it's just breathtaking to see a player with such speed, direct, penetrate, everything that you'd want to see in a centre forward, and his finishing. He's a brilliant player and something that's world class right at the very top.
Well, now he's the Premier League's leading marksman in one season, and he's got less games than those who held the record before. Andy Cole and Alan Shearer did it in a 42-game season, and he's still got games to add, but 35 is the number, and they've celebrated that in style tonight.
Yeah, and the goals he scored beating legends like Alan Shearer, Andy Cole, and he's brought someone into play that only I thought my granddad and my dad used to mention, which is Dixie Dean. Last time I heard Dixie Dean's name was sort of like when I was growing up, and I used to go to the games with my dad and my granddad, and he said, this greatest goal scorer of all time is Dixie Dean, and my granddad would talk about him, and now we're talking about potentially Erling Haaland having the opportunity to catch someone that you just never think is going to happen. But that's how good he is. I always thought Sergio Aguero would score more goals for City, and he scored a bag full of goals. I mean, tons of goals.
260.
Yeah, but I always thought he could score. I always thought he was that good. He could score 50 goals in a season. Just because he was that good, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. But this guy is, I don't know, it's difficult to explain. You have to come and watch him play to see the physicality, the power, the devastation that he causes. It's ferocious when you see him run. And yeah, look, Manchester City have got him. It makes them so much more dangerous. I mean, they've won 4 championships, 4 Premier Leagues in the last 5 years. And he was brought here for them to win the Premier League. The acid test is coming. The big moment is coming. This is your moment. Yeah, you've done incredibly well, but everyone is going to remember what you do in these next 2 games against Real Madrid, because you've been brought here to win this trophy. And that's not applying pressure to him, but that's the reality. That where they couldn't get over the line last year against Real Madrid, where they sort of blew it a little bit in the last 10 minutes of the game and didn't get over the line. They didn't beat Chelsea in the final. This is his moment, this next 2 or 3 weeks. And we know these games now are where he's got to deliver. And I think he will. I'm not putting pressure on him to sort of set him up for a fail. I think he will go and deliver against Real Madrid. I think he will be the difference.
He wasn't the difference tonight, actually, was he? Because in a game which Manchester City underplayed, really, for the first half, it was a free kick clip to the far post, an old-fashioned goal, if you like, from Nathan Ake that suddenly got City going. Yeah, I thought Kehrer and Ogbonna did really well against Haaland in general play. But you're right.
I always think that when you're playing against a team like Manchester City, and I watch many teams against them, you think, well, don't concede on a set piece. If they cut you open with brilliant play, fair enough, but then they've conceded on a set piece. And that'll be so disappointing to West Ham, because structurally they were as good as I've seen against Manchester City for a long time in that first half. But Manchester City have got the ability now. Gone are the days of, it was a team of David Silva, Fernandinho, De Bruyne, Sané, Sterling, Aguero. 6 players who were very diminutive and small. You look at this Manchester City team now, they're a team of giants and have still got great ability. You put Gundogan and De Bruyne and Rodri in midfield, they're all sort of 5'11", 6 foot plus. Haaland up front, so it's about 6'9". Yeah. And then you've got the back 4 now, which are all big. And you've got a goalkeeper who's dominant as well. Grealish is a unit on the left wing, and obviously Mahrez doesn't need to be on that other side, but they're a powerful team now. They're no longer a sort of team that's just about technical ability. This is physicality as well, and they can compete in both boxes on set pieces. They can head the ball. They're aggressive in the air. They're aggressive in the tackle. They're cynical at giving fouls away on counter-attack. They're the complete package. It's not just a team of pretty football players, and not everyone knows that, but you put it all together, it's a very experienced team that in every game is just so difficult to beat.
It's very daunting for Arsenal, of course, had a wonderful season, and we shouldn't write them off. It would be foolish to do that. But they've got some tests ahead, Newcastle in particular. What did you make of them against Chelsea?
I thought they did okay. I thought they did well. I was stunned by Chelsea. Really stunned by Chelsea. I'll come on to them in a minute maybe. But I was happy for Arsenal in the sense that I think that it would have been I half fancy when you saw that Chelsea team sheet, you thought, that's a hell of a team, that. And if they can just put a few passes together and get a bit of confidence, they've got the experience. The way Arsenal have been, you just think this could be a difficult night. But I think Arsenal, to be fair, Ødegaard, I thought was back to his best and played really well in the game. I thought the boy at centre-back did well coming in for Holding. Yeah, I thought he did well. So I think there were a number of positives for Arsenal last night in getting back to the point whereby, look, I hope they go and win that game on Sunday, because I think that's really important. Really difficult as well, by the way, to go and win there. But I think it's really important for them that they make Manchester City go to Goodison Park and think that they have to win and that they can't, take it easy. Because if they lose at Newcastle and City are still 4 points clear, they can actually afford a mistake. And I think that would let City off the hook, and I think we want to see it go as far as we can. Arsenal have really pushed City hard this season, and you don't want it just to fall away at the end. So I think it's a really important weekend. But it was good for Arsenal to beat Chelsea last night. There was a lot of pressure on them.
And they've got preparation time for their remaining games, even from Tuesday to Sunday, as opposed to Manchester City from Wednesday tonight to Saturday.
Yeah, that's maybe not helped them actually in the last couple of weeks where they've had those periods of preparation. But you're right. They've got a lot of time. They've got no excuses around that. And City do, to be fair, they're having to just play, recover at this moment. There's no rest in between for them. There's no training time, I suspect, either. So on that, I mean, they have got momentum, though, Manchester City, and they look so confident. You see them there at the end. They're all together with Haaland. But for Arsenal, it's a big weekend. For the Premier League, it's a big weekend. And then for Manchester City, it is a huge couple of weeks, because this is the real pivotal time now, Champions League semi-final. But for Arsenal, they've got to try and believe that somehow Arsenal are going to, that somehow Everton are going to do a job, going to do something for them. They can. Goodison Park is the type of ground where something can happen. You always want to say, do you see something happening there? No, I'm not sure, but you can always see something happening at Goodison Park. They're desperate down there. They're in massive trouble. And can they produce a performance? So there's a lot riding on that game. But to get to that game, Arsenal have to do their job at weekend.
Chelsea.
Disgusting. That's the worst performance I've ever seen from a group of players on the team sheet. It's the best group of I said something before the game. I'm that cold I can't even remember what I said. It's the best team on paper I've ever seen play as badly as that. Honestly, that was a shambles, that, in the first half. It was pathetic. I mean, they're strong words, those. But those players, World Cup winners, internationals, goes without saying, expensive. I can't believe it. I really can't believe it. I mean, I don't know what Frank Lampard was thinking. I think he'll be thinking the same words as I've just said. Everybody watching that game that was as bad as I've seen.
Yeah, he won't articulate them quite like you have. But
that's honestly, I'm saying what he will definitely be thinking. He will be disgusted by what he saw in that first half last night. Because when you sometimes interpret a manager's language about what they say on television, I don't know the words he used after, but they were strong words. You can times that by 100, what they're saying in the dressing room, what they're thinking privately with the coaching staff. I mean, I bet you can't believe it. But I do actually think Chelsea, if they get to the end of the season, which they obviously will, and they can get a manager appointed in the summer, and the talk is of Pochettino, I do think someone will be able to mould them into a decent team that can challenge for top four and for trophies next season. I think that's how bad this team is at this moment in time, that I think they're capable of that. That's what makes it even worse. I think they can actually, to be fair, be a real challenge next season in that sort of top three. And then people might think I'm mad after what we watched last night, but that makes it worse for me that those players have stooped to such a level. We saw it with Manchester United last season. Manchester United are third, fourth in the league at this moment in time, but last season under Ralph Rangnick, they chucked the towel in. They'd had enough. They'd chucked the towel in, those Chelsea players. They are not bothering at all. They may as well not turn up. If they weren't in a slight, they don't go down, are they? But if they weren't they're not mathematically safe. I think if they were on 42 points now, mathematically safe, if you're Frank Lampard, you'd almost sort of just leave them all out and play a bunch of kids.
And that's leaving a lot out.
Yeah.
Is that not the fundamental problem, Gary? I mean,
it is.
If we're going to look at the players' sake, and I ask you to put your players head on, really, you're in a dressing room with 30-odd players, all of whom are competing for 11 spots. And I don't know how much they're competing, but the truth is there's more discontented players than there are contented ones. Is that not the fundamental issue?
Oh, Martin, it all comes from the owners, the fundamental. But you can't, as players, with the quality that you have and the pride that you have, stoop to that level that we saw last night. We watched them a few weeks ago, didn't we, against Liverpool? Was it Tuesday or Wednesday night?
Tuesday night, yeah.
Tuesday,
yeah.
you were there.
I was there
watching.
Yeah.
And I thought they played really well that night, Chelsea. And I went away from that thinking there's promise for what could come next season and what could come in the future because of what they showed that night.
I think that's the last point they got, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. They're like a centre forward. They can't score goals. We knew that night. But they played well. There was a lot of good to come out of that performance. What we've seen since is nothing short of absolute disgrace. And look, it all comes from the top. It's been so chaotic. It's been a mess from day one.
Too much meddling from the start? I mean, is that one way of describing it?
I've said it publicly. I said it very early. Bowley's had a nightmare. He's completely misread this league. And he'll learn very quickly, I'm sure, just to sort of, if you like, stay in his lane. Because what's happened this season purely is down to him. He's come in and he needed somehow to try and keep the footballing department together. He's the non-footballing department, by the way. You've got to remind himself of that. He's the non-footballing department. You're the owner. You're not a Premier League player. You're not a coach. You're not someone who's got experience in this English league. So stay where you are and allow the people who've run the football club successfully with a very different model to most clubs over the last 10, 15 years that were still there, somehow try and get a year or two out of them to learn the ropes, to see what goes on, to try and keep them the stability and the consistency of what Chelsea have been. Because Chelsea last season, we watched them in a Carabao Cup final, they could have won an FA Cup final, they're still very close. So Thomas Tuchel was doing a good job. Keep your manager in place for the season if you can, because he's a very good manager, he's proven. Keep the majority of those players in place and maybe add to it in 3 or 4 strategic positions. I mean, he's got rid of the football department. Petr Cech's left. Marina Granovskaya's left. Then the manager's gone after 5, 6, 7 games. And all of a sudden, you're in complete turmoil. Then they start off with a strategy of older players, sort of players that you think have got more experience. Then all of a sudden, they flip it into a model of giving 38-year contracts to 22-year-olds and things like that. It's just become they're a laughing stock.
That'll make it very difficult for them to get rid of the players. Surely the new manager, if it is Pochettino, they've got to prune the stuff.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The whole thing has been a shambles. And then they've thrown out the medical department. They've chucked everything. It's just been far too much.
Changed the groundsman as well.
Has he changed the groundsman?
Yeah.
You can't blame the groundsman. I mean, I've got a thing with groundsmen myself, to be fair. They're so precious about their pitches. I mean, these pitches now, to be fair, they're like bowling greens. and you need to do a lot on them to make them wrong. But you know, the groundsmen are so proud about the pitch that you can't. When you start sacking groundsmen, physios, sports scientists, sporting directors, managers, everybody. You're sacking everybody.
Almost created a different club.
You're throwing everybody under a bus and saying it's all their fault and not mine. I've inherited a mess, but the problem is we all know that Chelsea wasn't a mess. Chelsea was a very successful club with people who ran it very well for a long time. This is Bowley created. He created this mess and this turmoil through a lack of experience, playing football manager. It's been terrible. However, those players that crossed that white line last night for Chelsea are an excellent group of players. People might not agree with me, but I looked at that team sheet and it's the worst performance I've ever seen from that talented a group of players. I've never seen a performance that bad. You know, you look at that front three and it was Aubameyang, Sterling and who was on the right wing? Madueke was it? Midfield, Kante, Fernandes and Kovacic. So much experience, talented back four. And it was an absolute shocker. I was laughing at one point. I actually said, I think, honestly, I'm playing in Soccer Aid in a few weeks, and there's one point in the game where they were all giving it away and falling over it, and it was like pinball. And I was thinking, this is embarrassing. And look, it really shocked me that last night, and I'm not letting them get away with it. I've used strong language. It's created by the new owner. They haven't had a clue what they're doing. Thought that from day one. It's been proven over the season, but the right managerial appointment.
It's still not announced, is
it?
So,
but the right managerial appointment, that talented group of players, refine the squad and get it down to a sensible level, bring in one or two more signings that probably they need, like a centre forward, maybe a goalkeeper or whatever it is that they need, a centre half, whatever. And I think they'll actually have a decent season next year. That sounds really crazy saying it, but I don't think it's ever as bad as you think, and it's never as good as you think unless you're actually at Manchester City under Pep Guardiola. But I think that ultimately it's been a shocker, but I think it can be resurrected quite quickly with the appointment of a very good, strong manager who can control that group of players and stop the meddling from the ownership and just create some stability in the backroom team and the back of the playing staff.
That leads us on nicely to the appointment of a very familiar face for 4 games at Leeds United. What have you made? I mean, when did you hear that Big Sam was back?
Well, it was obviously mooted a couple of days. I couldn't believe it at first, to be honest with you. I mean, you talk about Leeds United, the desperation that we're now seeing. Look, I'm a club owner, I've sacked managers, Martin, but the desperation that we've seen this season in the Premier League, mainly due to the fact that teams are so worried about losing that income, about going down, and what the cause of that. We're seeing some of the maddest football decisions we've ever seen. And it's crazy. And this Leeds season has been as crazy as it gets. Obviously, Jesse Marsh stayed for a long time. Javi Gracia comes in. Doesn't work. But then gets sacked, and Sam Allardyce comes in for 4 games. And then the sporting director goes for Leeds.
Is there any connection because this is an elongated season and we had the World Cup in the middle, and I mean it has been madness in terms of managerial changes, desperation from the owners, and
it's getting more desperate. I genuinely think it's to do with, I think that they commit when they're in the Premier League. They want to be in the Premier League, obviously. They've worked hard to get there. But then the desperation to stay there is off the scale for some clubs. And I think Leeds, Everton are in deep, deep trouble. I had last week, I had Bournemouth 3-4 weeks ago. Wow, how well they've done. But they're gone now. They're out of it. So now you're looking at Everton, you're looking at Leicester, you're looking at Leeds, Forest, obviously, Southampton. And there's going to be 1 or 2 huge clubs that go down. And the pain that will cause will be significant. The ramifications we don't know yet, but I'll always remember Leeds when they, in the COVID season, they were the ones that wanted to stop the season, weren't they? Was it to stop the season so they went up, and because they needed to go up that season for financial reasons, they were worried about it being null and void. And I think that last year their CEO Angus Kinnear said that bringing in an independent regulator was like Maoism. if they go down, they might need some of those social principles to look after them, particularly the parachute payments. So look, I never want any club to go down. I refuse to give predictions on going down for many, many years at Sky, because I always felt as though it was something that...
Voice of doom.
Yeah, I didn't like doing it. And you get dragged in the last couple of years because with social media, podcasts, everyone likes the debate of who's going to go down, and you add to it sometimes. But I get it wrong every single time, because everybody would have said Bournemouth 4 weeks ago with Southampton. They're gone, right, who's the next one? I thought Nottingham Forest were always in trouble from January when I watched them. So Nottingham Forest I'm putting in there just because of something that I've seen. I don't think West Ham go down from what I've seen tonight. I actually don't think Leicester go down.
Did you watch that game on Monday?
Yeah.
I thought it was a very interesting way to try and get out of trouble.
Yeah.
Attack.
Yeah.
We're used to attritional matches to try and nick a result at the crucial stage of the season.
Yeah, I've got this theory that managers that come in with sort of 4, 5, 6, 7 games to go, they've almost got nothing to lose, because they can always say, well, I inherited a squad that was going to go down anyway, and sort of they might as well go for it. And look, I really enjoyed the game on Monday night. I thought it was fantastic to watch, but I think Leicester will just stay up. I've got a feeling that I said Everton, Forest and Southampton last week. I'll still stay with that, but it could easily be Leeds instead of Everton. It could easily be Leeds instead of Forest. There's no one at this moment in time that's giving me sort of that great hope for their fans. I think they're all in real panic mode, and what we've seen at Leeds is just symptomatic of the desperation that's existing to prevent teams from going down. Sam Allardyce, by the way, you should welcome him back to the Premier League.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you.
He was probably never expected. He was probably never expecting that call, or maybe he was. I mean, his interview today I thought was hilarious, and I actually saw when I think I put some laughy emojis against it when he said I'm the equal of Klopp, I'm the equal of Pep, and I'm the equal of Arteta, which ultimately. That's Big Sam. It's his confidence, it's his personality, it's his character.
And he wants to get that into a group that's losing matches.
Yeah, and it sounds shocking when you hear that, and it sounds like madness. And then I think a few of the responses that came through saying straight away it takes the pressure off the players, because the headline's all about him and what he said, because it is an outrageous thing to say. Pep Guardiola will go down as probably one of the top managers of all time. Sam Allardyce won't. But he said it. That I'm the equal of Pep.
And he's had over 500 Premier League games.
Oh,
so yeah.
He's had massive experience, but look, ultimately, that's just wrong, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's quite clear that'll be the headline. It's what everyone's talking about, but it takes the pressure away from the players.
Well, what do you think he'll come here and do on Saturday?
I haven't got a clue. I think he'll look at tonight's game. I think he'll have been watching that very closely. I think he'll have watched Leeds' games, last few games, very closely. And he'll go with 4-5-1 or he'll go with 5-4-1, I think. I don't think there's any other way you can go. Whatever he really thinks is the best way. And I don't think he'll even be thinking on Saturday that, of course, he'll be in his dreams thinking that he might be able to come here and get a point or somehow get a win. And that would be absolutely, well, it would shock the world, wouldn't it?
It would.
It would shock the world, and it would be something that the Premier League could deliver. And Sam Allardyce probably could deliver. But I don't think he'll be even thinking Saturday is the game where he picks up points. This will be the game that he thinks, well, I want to get to know my players really, and this is where I want to develop a spirit. And I'm sure he'll be doing some things to develop that spirit in this next 24, 48 hours before the game on Saturday. But you come here and, I think that Pep Guardiola will maybe think a little bit more about the game. He'll think a lot about the game anyway, but you'll think, well, what's Sam Allardyce going to do? His coaching staff will think, well, what could they do that's different? How could they surprise us? But Leeds are very bad and have been very bad. So
and their players couldn't, at the moment, put on a discipline show like we saw from West Ham in the first half.
They've got absolutely no discipline.
No.
So you're thinking to yourself, what's he going to do to them in 48 hours? It would be the shock of all shocks. But that's what Sam Allardyce has got to go and try and deliver, because they're coming to one of the best teams in the world, certainly the best team in the Premier League, and they're ill-disciplined in the way in which they play. They're all over the place. Everything that you would think Sam Allardyce team is not. So he's got to work a miracle in this next few days.
He's somebody we didn't think we'd be mentioning.
No, but I have to say, ultimately, I'm not putting them in the same bracket, but I think there might be an element of what Crystal Palace did, bringing in Roy Hodgson with great experience. And Roy's obviously had a career where he's managed Liverpool and Inter Milan and taken Switzerland to World Cup for the first time. He's had and managed England 4 years. Had a stunning career, and I'm not putting him in the same bracket at all. They're not. But Roy's just brought great calmness and assurance and confidence to Crystal Palace, and I'm sure Leeds have looked at that situation. Dean Smith coming in at Leicester and thought, we just need somebody who's been around the block, who knows what it's like to be in this situation, and followed that sort of, if you like, pattern.
Calm and assured, like yourself.
Not really. I'm freezing. I don't know why I'm shocked by being cold in my own city, particularly this stadium. It's freezing.
It is May.
It is May, I know, as well. I was looked at the temperature earlier on today, and it was 12, 13 degrees at this time of night, and thinking, no, I didn't account for the breeze, the Mancunian breeze, the northern breeze.
Well done, shivering.
Yeah.
You've delivered as always. Thanks,
Thank
Gary.
you. Thank you.